pretty wonderful machine. Every time you pull the handle, you get a loaded round, in this case of 9mm. And yes, this is my brand new Dillon Super 1050. Only it's not brand new, it's new to me, but it's been around a while. I've wanted one of these things for 30 years at least, and just couldn't justify doing it because I don't shoot enough to really warrant the price of one of these. But once in a while, the stars line up and everything works right. And a friend who had this was shooting competitively, and he was shooting thousands of rounds, and so he needed this. Well, he got good enough that an ammunition company started sponsoring him. He no longer needed this, and he offered it me at well, you know, the price you can't turn down. But it's the Dillon 1050. Everything you've heard about it is true. It's great. It works flawlessly. It just produces ammo after ammo bit. And they're all just, well, they're just fine. What I'd like to do is show you some of the details of this machine. While we've got the wide shot here, this big blue thing is where the brass cases go in, and we'll look at that in a minute. And round behind it, which you probably can't see, is another smaller hopper where the bullets go. And they feed down through this spring into this bullet feeder. The brass feeds down through this tube into the case feeder, and I'll show you all that in a minute. What else is there? Well, you see the handle, it bolts up. It's got a tool stand on the back. There's a bullet tray, which I don't need since I'm using the bullet feeder, so I don't need this. It normally would mount right here, and which gives you good access to putting the bullets into the case. You got your primer here and your powder back there, and we'll look at all these details now and close up. Is that it? Let's see. I tell you what, let me do one more thing. I'll dump in a few. Okay, we'll dump in a few, and what'll happen here is I'm almost out of primers, and we'll see what it does and how we handle that. Let's also give you an idea of how fast and smooth this thing is. I think I got about one more to go. One more. There you go. So it's saying you're out of primers. Well, it doesn't, you're really not out of primers, you're just very low on primers, and it's time to refill. It doesn't let you run out, which is really good. And we'll look at this machine over here in detail in a minute, but this is the primer filling machine, which he also had as part of the package. Wow, a deal here. Okay, let's move in close and start looking at things, starting up here at the top. As a general rule, I avoid using handheld cameras, but I have to make an exception here because my tripod just won't reach high enough. But that's down inside the hopper of the case feeder. See, make sure we're in focus. There we go. And what you see is called the shell plate. That's the gray thing with all the fingers around the edge. Looks like a big gear. And the brass pieces magically line themselves up. Let's go ahead and turn it on here. Turn it on slow. They just line themselves up and fall down into the tube. And show you that. There's the tube filling up. And when the tube gets full enough, it will trip this micro switch. Up, there we did it, and shut it off. So you have a tube full of these cases, and you're ready to go. Now, while we're up here, let's move over here. And a similar machine or device is the bullet feeder. All right, here's the nutshell version of how it works. The bullets will either be wrong side up, that is with a point down, or they'll be right side up with a point up and base down. So it's going to be one or the other. And what will happen is, let's see, let me take that one out. When it reaches this area right in here, if it's point down, this device will rotate it over so that no matter what, when it gets to here, it's going to be right side up and drop into the hopper. So there we go. Isn't that amazing? I tell you what, some people are just really smarter than others. That's all I've got to say. So anyway, that's the story from up top here of the two hoppers. So now let's move down and see some other things. While we're on the subject of the bullet feeder, as I told you, the bullets come down this spring into this die here, which is the bullet feeder. And when the case goes up in here, it actuates it and drops a bullet. Well, right now there are no bullets in here. This little window is empty. What's going to happen is it will fill it actually down inside, up through here, all the way up to this point where there's a micro switch. And when the top bullet moves that micro switch over, it'll stop feeding. So incidentally, I don't think I can, yeah, maybe I can show it to you. There's a little speed control that comes with it, and I'm going to turn it on minimum. And there's a bullet. See them coming down through the spring, dropping through. It's filling up down in here. Now they're doing, now watch it when it does the last one, be about one more. Nope, one more. Okay, so it stopped once that filled up. Now, as you are using the machine and this drops down, that switch will come back on and it will continue to fill it up. So it always keeps up with you. Same thing with the case feeder. Well, as you recall, we ran out of primers, so we're going to use this machine right here to fill it with primers. And what's going to happen is we're going to take these primers, dump them in here, it will sort them out, and it will put them all into this tube right here, which I hope you can see. Once it's filled up, then we can dump them out from here directly into the machine, which I'll show you in a moment. But for the right now, we'll just put this tube back in place and we're going to fill it with these. And I've got it down here on the floor so I can get over it and show you close up what's going to happen. This is sort of magic right here. We're going to start, there's a recessed area here, and we'll start by taking our primers and we'll open it so we're exposing half of a row, not a complete one, so I don't spill them. And then all I have to do is just hold on to it and, oh, it's easy to say, and then slide that off. And there they all are. Now, I know you're saying to yourself watching that, why would I want something that takes 2 minutes to load those primers? I can do it manually for nothing, or I can use one of the little gun-looking things to do it and all like that. Yes, you can, but this does it totally unattended, which means you run out, when you fill this thing up with primers and put it back in there, dump some more on it, go back to reloading while this is filling up. Yeah, does that matter? Yes, it does in a production system where you're really trying to put out thousands of rounds, which is basically the idea behind this. I'm probably the worst example in the world of someone who owns one of these because of the low volume of shooting I do. On the other hand, I love good tools and I love reloading tools in particular, so I have absolutely no qualms about owning this machine right here, especially after the good deal. But do you need one of these? If you're doing production, they're really great. They really are. It works. It works really well. Unattended. That's the big deal. All right, let's move in and do some more close-up look here. All right, I've got you in close over here on the right side where the handle is, and we can see stations 1, 2, 3, and way back there, 4. And we'll look at them one at a time, and I'll tell you what each one does. First thing here you can see is station 0, I guess, where the case feeder will feed a brass case into the thing. I'm going to go ahead and do that manually, so I'll have one on this very first pull. So, well, no, I won't. But at any rate, now we've got it. All right. And you notice that the shell plate indexes rotates at the very end of the upstroke, at the very last part of it. You have these nice little tabs with brass pins that locate the case. They keep it right in line. They don't allow it to fall out. But at the same time, if you need to remove it, see, you can do that. I think all progressive presses have these as far as I know. I don't know how many of them come with these little tabs. I know that the 2 other ones I have don't, so there's that. This first die is conventional. It's a sizing die. It has a decapping pin. It's going to knock the primer out into here. So there you do that. Now, this die right here, or this station, is quite unusual. And I'm going to show you what happens without a case being in there. Let me show you what it does. You see what's happening there? Oh, goodness. Give us a break. Thank you. What we have is 2 pins coming toward each other. The bottom one is a swaging pin or punch, and the top one is an expander that also holds the case down firmly against the swaging. So it's being hit from both sides, the case is. And what we're trying to accomplish is to make sure that this primer pocket is uniform, and especially if it's a military case, which a lot of them tend to be. If it's military brass, then that primer will have been crimped into place, and it will have a ring or 3 punch marks around it. That will virtually prevent loading a new primer into that pocket until that crimp has been removed. So that's what this does, is it removes the crimp. On the upside, it expands the case to the correct diameter. You remember that tube of primers that we filled up a while ago over at the primer station? Well, now what we'll do is just set it right here, this little bottom part of it, and this thing's full of primers. We're going to set it right there on top. It's kind of a funnel-like underneath. Pull that pin, zing, you maybe couldn't hear it, and they all go in. And then at that point, we put our alarm switch back into place. It goes off when that rod presses down on it. And now we're ready to go again. All right, this is station 1, 2, 3. Station 3 by this white slanted plastic piece. This is where the primer gets put in, and I'm going to pull forward. Did you see it slide out? And then it lifts up into position. And at that point, the primer gets seated into the case. Back here on the back is our powder measure, and the hopper up at the top, and the dispensing mechanism down here. Now, what I want to show you is what happens, let me zoom in just a little bit, when when we actuate the handle, you see it's going down, and not really much happened. You see those levers, they stayed pretty much, it moved just a little bit. See, there, it moves that much. But that's all. Now I've added a case back here. So let's pull back out so we can see what happens. And watch the powder bar when it comes down this time, or the powder lever mechanism. See there? It went all the way up, and that time it dispensed powder into that case. And the reason for that, of course, is that the case itself actuates the powder measure. And therefore, you don't get powder when you don't have a case, and you do get powder when you do. So it's, you know, what more could you ask? Now our lead cartridge is positioned under the powder checker. And what will happen is a plunger goes down inside, and this rod right here, depending on circumstances, will set off an alarm or not. In this case, not, because it had the correct amount of powder. Here's how it works. When this thing comes down, the plunger at the bottom pushes up on that and pushes it all the way over. If that pin up at the top is pressed back, like you see there, then it will alarm. But if this bar, which is raised and lowered by the amount of powder, if it's in that middle spot, it won't set off the alarm. So what happens is when this thing goes down, the powder causes it to raise up just that much, and there's no alarm. If we had too much powder, we get an alarm. If we don't have enough, we get an alarm. If it's just right, we don't. Pretty smooth, huh? And you just keep that up over and over and over, making those cartridges, and it really is just that easy. Dillon 1050, 9mm. Thank you for watching.